Alex came over, putting an arm around me. You both handled that brilliantly. If that was me, I don't think I could have kept my cool. I smiled, leaning into him. We've had a bit of practice dealing with difficult patients, but he's on another level. Yeah, well, he's gone now. And from what I've seen, he won't be back anytime soon. Alex added, ever the optimist. Mom nodded, her gaze thoughtful. It's strange. For so long, the thought of facing him seemed like the ultimate showdown. Now that it's happened, it feels like, I don't know, like closing a book I've been reading for too long. That's because we're on to the next chapter, I said, feeling a surge of hope. And this time, we're writing it on our terms. As the day wound down, I found myself staring at the door Dad had walked out of. It was just a door, but it felt symbolic, like the barrier between our past and our future. Thinking about locking that door and throwing away the key, Alex joked, coming up beside me. Something like that, I admitted, but more about all the doors that are still open for us. Mom joined us, her arm linking with mine. He may have left a shadow here once, but we're the ones who choose what fills this place now. Love, care, and a whole lot of hard work. Yeah, and a no jerks allowed policy, I added, earning a chuckle from both of them. As we locked up the clinic that evening, the sunset painted the sky in hues of hope and promise. The departure of Shadows wasn't just about Dad leaving. It was about us stepping out from under the weight of his influence, ready to face the light of a new day. A few months down the line, the wedding bells were ringing. Me and Alex tied the knot in this cozy little ceremony, just a bunch of our relatives and close friends, the kind of people who'd been there through thick and thin. Dad. He was nowhere in sight, which suited me just fine. The day was perfect without his shadow looming over us. Chatting with some of the docs we knew, the gossip mills were churning. Turns out, Dad had crashed and burned big time. Dad's up to his eyeballs in debt, his last bit of property snatched away to cover some of them. And the cherry on top, a lineup of angry patients with botched jobs, ready to take him to court. Karma's a real kicker, ain't it? So he's really tanked, huh? I sent to Mom over coffee one morning, trying not to sound too smug about it. Mom sighed, her eyes a mix of relief and something a bit softer, maybe pity. Seems like it, Lisa, but let's not dwell on it. We've got our own lives to live. Yeah, you're right, I replied, feeling a twinge of, I don't know, something, not exactly sadness, but close. It's just crazy, you know. After everything. Alex, ever the voice of reason, chimed in. Life's about moving forward, not looking back at the debris. We've got a lot to be thankful for. He was right, as usual. The wedding was a blast, a real celebration of new beginnings. And with Dad's drama finally in the rear view, it felt like we could breathe again, really breathe. Our little family's got a bright future ahead, Mom said, her hand finding mine. Let's focus on that. And that's exactly what we did. The clinic thrived, our marriage was full of love and laughter, and the shadow of Dad's legacy faded into nothing more than a bad memory. We were building something new, something ours, and nothing could drag us down. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. The hardships, the battles, they made us who we are. And standing there with my mom and Alex by my side, I knew we were unbreakable. The past was just that, the past. Our eyes were set on the horizon, eager for the dawn of our new day. And just like that, it was decided. We were moving into Mom's house. As I started packing up our apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something big. I just didn't know if it was something good or bad. John was over the moon about the move. He kept talking about the garden he'd plant, the man cave he'd set up in the basement. Even Sarah seemed excited about having a bigger room. The move to Mom's house brought a whole new set of challenges. I quickly realized that taking care of a stroke patient was a full-time job, one I wasn't equipped to handle alone. After a week of sleepless nights and stress-filled days, I hired a nurse to help out during the day. Nurse Jenny was a godsend. She came in every morning at 8 and stayed until 6, taking care of Mom's basic needs. But evenings and nights were all on me. I'd come home from work exhausted, only to start my second shift as Mom's caretaker. The stroke had affected her speech, leaving her frustrated and often silent. I'd change her diaper, giving her as much dignity as I could in the process. Then came the sponge bath, the massage to keep her muscles from atrophying, the meds, and finally dinner. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally. Seeing my vibrant, independent mother reduced to this state broke my heart every day. But I did it because I loved her, because she'd have done the same for me. What I didn't expect was Sarah's reaction to her grandmother's condition. At 11, I thought she'd be old enough to understand, to help. Even boy, was I wrong. One evening, as I was heading to Mom's room, I saw Sarah dart past, her hand clamped firmly over her nose. "Sarah," I called out, "where are you going? Don't you want to say hi to Grandma?" She shook her head violently. "No way, it smells gross in there." I was shocked. "Sarah, that's not a nice thing to say. Grandma needs our help and support right now." "I don't care," she spat back. "She's disgusting. I'm not going near her." Before I could respond, she stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, stunned and hurt. Where had my sweet little girl gone? I turned to John for support, but found none. Not my problem, he'd say whenever I asked for help with Mom. I didn't sign up for this. It stung, but I couldn't entirely blame him. He hadn't signed up for this. None of us had. Still, I couldn't help but feel resentful as I watched him play video games with Sarah or take her out for ice cream while I was elbow-deep in adult diapers and medication schedules. The one silver lining was seeing how close John and Sarah had become. They'd always had a good relationship, but now it seemed stronger than ever. I'd hear them laughing together in the living room or see them huddled over Sarah's homework at the kitchen table. It warmed my heart, even as it made me feel more isolated. 2 years flew by in a blur of bedpans, medications, and stolen moments of sleep. Mom's condition had stabilized, but she still needed constant care. I was exhausted, but I'd found a rhythm. Then one ordinary Tuesday, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was changing Mom's sheets. It was Mrs. Peterson, our old neighbor from the apartment complex. "Mia, dear," she said, her voice dripping with concern. "I thought you should know I've been seeing John around quite a bit, with company of young women. Different ones, always very pretty." I thanked her and hung up, my mind reeling. That night, I confronted John. "Oh, those are just potential tenants," he said smoothly. "I'm showing them the apartment." I wanted to believe him, I really did, but doubt had taken root, and it grew like a weed. A week later, I found the lipstick stain. It was on the collar of his white shirt, a perfect crimson kiss. My hand shook as I held it up to the light, trying to convince myself it was just a pen mark or a food stain, but I knew better. I waited until his next business trip to make my move. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door to our old apartment. The sounds coming from the bedroom confirmed my worst fears before I even opened the door. There was John in our bed with a woman I'd never seen before. They scrambled to cover themselves, but the damage was done. "Mia," John exclaimed, not even having the decency to look ashamed. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the scene before me, feeling my world crumble around me. "Look," John said, his voice cold. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but let's be honest, Mia. I'm bored. You're always busy with your mother. This is exciting." His words cut deeper than any knife. Without a word, I turned and left, my mind already racing towards what I needed to do next. The divorce proceedings were ugly. John fought me every step of the way, but in the end, we stood before a judge, dividing up our life together like it was nothing more than assets on a balance sheet. Then came the hardest part, custody of Sarah. At 12, she was old enough to have a say, and her choice broke my heart. "I want to live with Dad," she declared, her voice steady. "I don't want to be around Grandma anymore. It's gross and depressing, and Mom's always trying to make me help." The judge nodded sympathetically. He took into account John's higher income, the stability he could provide, and Sarah's clear preference. In the end, John was awarded primary custody. I was devastated, but I tried to focus on what was best for Sarah. John could give her opportunities I couldn't: private school, dance lessons, summer camps. We agreed on weekends and holidays for me, a schedule that looked so neat and tidy on paper, but felt like a gaping wound in my heart as I watched Sarah pack up her things, chatting excitedly about her new room at Dad's new place. I felt like I was losing everything. My marriage was over, my daughter was leaving, and I was left with a house that felt more like a hospital than a home. The first few months after the divorce were tough, but I clung to my weekends with Sarah like a lifeline. We'd go to the movies, have ice cream in the park, or just hang out at home. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then slowly, things began to change. Sarah started canceling plans. "I have a sleepover," she'd say, or "Dad's taking me to a concert." I tried to be understanding, to be the cool mom who didn't make a fuss, but each cancellation felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Soon, the cancellations became more frequent. Weeks would go by without a visit. My calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages were met with one-word responses, if I got any response at all. One Sunday, after yet another canceled visit, I decided to call Sarah directly. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. This time, a robotic voice informed me that the number I was trying to reach had blocked my calls. My hand shook as I dialed John's number. "What do you want, Maya?" His voice was cold, annoyed. "John, I can't reach Sarah. She's blocked my number. What's going on?" There was a long pause. "Look, Mia," John said, "Sarah doesn't want to talk to you right now. You need to respect that." "Respect that? She's my daughter." "She's also a person with her own feelings," John shot back. "And right now, she doesn't want to be around all that negativity at your place. I mean the sickness, the sadness. Sarah needs stability. She needs a normal family. Sarah sees Lisa as a mother figure now. She has a normal family life here. 2 parents, no sick relatives, no drama. Why can't you just let her be happy?" I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down my face, and I was glad John couldn't see me. "Look," he continued, his voice softening slightly. "I know this is hard, but if Sarah doesn't want to see you right now, you need to respect that. Don't force it. It'll only push her away more." I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand my rights as a mother, but a small rational part of my brain whispered that he might be right. If I pushed too hard, I might lose Sarah forever. I sank to the floor, phone clutched to my chest, and sobbed. My little girl, my Sarah, didn't want me anymore. Someone else was being her mother, kissing her good night, helping with homework, sharing all the moments I was missing. Mom found me there hours later, still on the floor. She'd managed to shuffle over with her walker, her face creased with concern. Mia, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. What's wrong, sweetheart? I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my rock for so long, who I'd been taking care of for years. In that moment, our roles reversed again. I was the child seeking comfort from my mother. Oh, Mom, I cried, reaching for her hand. I've lost her. I've lost my baby girl. Mom squeezed my hand, her touch still weak, but full of love. No, Mia, she said softly. You haven't lost her. She's just lost right now. She'll find her way back to you. You'll see. 14 years. It's amazing how time can fly by and drag on simultaneously. Mom's condition improved slightly over the years. She regained some mobility and speech, but caring for her remained a full-time job. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep, I felt a mixture of grief and shamefully relief. Suddenly, I found myself alone in this big, empty house. The silence was deafening. No more beeping medical equipment. No more schedules of medications and therapy sessions. Just me rattling around in rooms full of memories. Then out of the blue, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice, I'd know it anywhere, even after all these years. Mom, it's Sarah. I was hoping we could meet to talk. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown. As I waited, my hand shaking around my coffee cup, I spotted a young woman entering. It took me a moment to realize it was Sarah. Gone was the gangly preteen I remembered. In her place stood a poised, beautiful young woman. Hi, Mom, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. We made awkward small talk at first. She filled me in on her life, her job in marketing, her hobbies, her friends. Then she dropped the bombshell. I'm getting married, she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Here's an invitation. My heart swelled with joy and a tinge of sadness. My little girl was getting married, and I'd missed so much. Oh, Sarah, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you. Listen, if you need any help with the expenses. She cut me off abruptly. Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I wanted to meet. I was hoping to talk about Grandma's inheritance, the house, her savings. I want them. I felt like I'd been slapped. Excuse me. Look, Mom, she said, leaning forward. That house is in a great area. It's worth a fortune. After the wedding, Jake and I want to live there, start our family there. Anger bubbled up inside me. Sarah, you haven't set foot in that house in over a decade. You said it disgusted you. You called it a tomb. She waved her hand dismissively. I was a kid then. I've grown up. Times have changed, and let's face it, I'm Grandma's only grandchild. She would have wanted me to have it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wanted you to have it, Sarah. You didn't even come to her funeral. You didn't call, didn't write for years. That's ancient history, she snapped. The point is that house should be mine. I deserve a comfortable life. Deserve? I was practically shaking with rage. You didn't lift a finger to help when Grandma was sick. I gave up my life to care for her, and now you think you deserve her house. Sarah's face hardened. Fine, if that's how you want to play it. I'll sue. I'll get what's rightfully mine. She stood up abruptly, snatching the wedding invitation from the table. You know what? Forget it. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't need your negativity there, and I don't need your permission to take what's mine. As she stormed out of the cafe, I sat there stunned. The daughter I'd loved, missed, and longed for all these years was gone. In her place was this stranger, cold and greedy. The days following that disastrous cafe meeting passed in a haze. I alternated between rage, grief, and a numbing emptiness. But as the dust settled, I realized something surprising. I felt relieved. The weight of hoping for reconciliation, of longing for a relationship with Sarah, had lifted. In its place was a strange sort of peace. I didn't attend Sarah's wedding. I didn't send a gift or a card. Instead, I spent that day volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding comfort in the unconditional love of abandoned pets who needed care. It felt fitting somehow. Curiosity got the better of me a few days later, and I found myself scrolling through Sarah's social media. There she was, radiant in white, smiling up at her new husband. For a moment, my heart clenched with the pain of what might have been. But then I saw it, a long rambling post about her cruel mother, who refused to attend her wedding and withheld her rightful inheritance out of spite. I read it twice, marveling at the sheer audacity of her lies. Part of me wanted to comment to set the record straight, but what would be the point? The people who mattered, the family who had seen me care for Mom all those years, knew the truth. As for everyone else, well, their opinions, based on a stranger's social media post, were hardly my concern. A week later, my cousin Jenny called. "Mia, I thought you should know," she said, her voice a mix of anger and concern. "Sarah's been talking about suing you for your mom's estate." I sighed, unsurprised. Let her try. "That's just it," Jenny continued. "Apparently, she talked to a lawyer. He told her she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Your mom left everything to you, clear as day." I couldn't help but chuckle. Of course, Mom had taken care of that. She'd always been the practical one. "Thanks for letting me know, Jenny," I said, "but honestly, I don't care what Sarah does anymore. She's made her choices." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Then I'm proud of you, Mia. After everything you've been through, you deserve some peace." As I hung up the phone, I looked around the house. Mom's house, now my house. Every corner held memories, some painful, some beautiful. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe here. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Mom had loved so much. It had gotten a bit overgrown in recent years, but I could see its potential. Maybe it was time to bring some life back to it. As I stood there, planning my next trip to the garden center, I realized something. The chapter of my life revolving around Sarah, the hope, the pain, the longing, was finally closing. But that didn't mean my story was over. Far from it. The garden was in full bloom when the call came. I'd spent the past few months throwing myself into its restoration, finding solace in the simple act of nurturing life. The roses Mom had loved so much were just starting to open, their scent filling the air as I pruned the bushes. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. "Hello, Mom." Sarah's voice, thick with tears. "Mom, I need your help." I froze, pruning shears still in hand. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "I'm pregnant," she sobbed. "And we're struggling, Mom. I need money. You have to help me. You can't leave your grandchild without anything." I listened in silence as she continued to babble, her words growing increasingly desperate and accusing. "You left me behind, Mom. You've never battled for me or attempted to get in touch with me. And now you're going to desert your grandson as well." I felt a calm, unwavering resolution snap within of me instead of rage. "Sarah," I murmured steadily, "that's enough." She stopped talking, perhaps surprised that I had cut her off. "I never left you. I consistently sent child support each month. I emailed, texted, and phoned. My number was banned by you. Your stepmother was your choice. Even though your choices were heartbreaking, I honored the decisions you made. However, no." Sarah cut me off. I responded firmly, "Sarah, I'm not finished. At this point, you are an adult who will soon become a parent. You need to take ownership of your life and your decisions. Your bank is not me. I'm not there to protect you. Furthermore, falsehoods and guilt trips won't be used to influence me. On the other end of the telephone, I could hear her breathing heavily. Go to your father and stepmother for assistance if you need it. Remember, they are your actual family, the ones you selected. I have come to terms with that. You must now accept the repercussions of your decisions. You can't do this. Sarah sobbed. I can, I answered, lowering my voice a little. My daughter is you. You are indeed. And I will always cherish you as the little girl you were. However, I have no idea what kind of lady you have become. Additionally, I don't believe I want to. I inhaled deeply. Sarah, goodbye. I hope all is well with you and your child, but please don't get in touch with me ever again. Before she could answer, I hung up, lowering the phone with a trembling hand. I felt the weight of what had just transpired for a minute as I stood in the garden, surrounded by the blossoming life I had cultivated. Then gradually, I experienced a boost. I had severed the remaining connections that held me to a traumatic past. Finally, the what-ifs were put to rest. I surveyed the garden and the home on the other side. This was my life now, shaped by the decisions I made moving ahead rather than by regret or loss. Returning my attention to the rosebush, I grabbed my pruning shears. There was still beauty to develop, more work to be done. And I felt really very free for the first time in as long as I could remember.